So, a week and 2 days ago, a very close friend of mine bought a shotgun, went out into the woods with that shotgun, and a bottle of Jack Daniels, and put both the Jack and the shotgun down his throat. He was clinically depressed. He had a mental illness that had gone untreated for only about 2 weeks. He ran out of his medication and was unable, for bureaucratic reasons, to get it back. And in such cases, there's a thing called state-based memory. Scientists have discovered, for example, that if you are drunk while you're studying for a test, you'll do better on that test if you're drunk when you take the test. Right? So if you're in a certain biochemical state when learning, that same biochemical state is necessary to get the best recall of what you've learned. So if you're depressed, it's very hard to remember being happy. You can sort of intellectually know or recall believing that you were happy, but your ability to remember what that actually feels like is gone. And on the other side, if you're in a manic or normal or happy phase, it's hard to remember that depression as anything real. So within those 2 weeks, he got to a place where feeling better no longer seemed real. And he killed himself. It's impossible to logic with mental illness. It just is. And yet, I don't know. I've been there. When I was 17, I remember lying in my bed trying to think, what would change in my life that would make things feel better? And I imagine, well, what if this? No, I would still feel like shit. What if that? Well, no, I'd still feel like shit. If I had a genie's magic 3 wishes, nothing it could offer me would make me feel any better. That was depression. That was state-based memory, because as I was imagining things, I couldn't imagine any of it making me feel any better. So shortly thereafter, I took an overdose of my father's prescription Valium, and more or less by accident was discovered in time, taken to the hospital, stomach pumped. And when I woke up, which was a gradual thing that seems like it took almost a week, but probably was a day or less, I saw there were people around my bed that loved me, cared. And I said to myself, well, the universe isn't done with me yet. And I promised myself I would never do that again. And there were times since then that it was only that promise that kept me going. And more recently, I've received a diagnosis of bipolar, and I'm receiving treatment. It's working beautifully. The thing that made it hard for me to realize this was that I mostly was depressed or normal or irritable. I didn't get much of that manic state. Be that as it may, I empathize with where my friend was at. I have other friends who have tried or are considering it or have considered it. And if there's a strong biochemical issue, then really there's no reasoning that can affect it. And yet, I want to try. If your life is bad, whether it's bad by events or by internal feeling. One of the things that will come to mind is a desire to end it, to end the pain, to end the torment. But suicide is obviously a final action. You don't get to take another one afterwards. That's end of game. It's a desperate action. And it may be the only one that will actually, say, I mean, from where you're at, it may seem like the only option. But I would counsel this. If that's your ultimate final desperate action, let's say that's 100% desperate, don't you think you owe it to yourself to try a 90% desperate option first? Or an 80%? I don't counsel people to do desperate things. But if they're gonna do a desperate thing, they should really not go all the way to 100%. So, depending on your situation and what seems possible or not. Some parents gonna yell at me for this, but running away from home is a less desperate action than killing yourself. So, if you're at the point where you're seriously considering killing yourself, I think you owe it to yourself to try the experiment of trying a lesser desperation. Run away from home. I'm not saying that'll solve anything, but it's a less desperate thing to try. Join the circus. Quit your job. Do a midlife crisis. Hitchhike across the country. Move to Canada. Go into pornography. Take drugs. I'm not saying any of these things will fix anything, and I'm not saying any of these things is necessarily a good idea. But don't go to 100%, 99%. Try it. Try a few things before you give up entirely. And my hope is that either one of those things will click and you'll go, wow, this does actually work for me. Or it'll help gain you perspective on where you're at, or at the very least, it will be a delaying tactic until your brain chemistry comes back online. And maybe a few percentage points less desperate than that is actually seeking help. And I know the mental health industry in this country is overworked, understaffed, and yet there are emergency hotlines, there are ways, it's not ideal, but you could wind up in the emergency room and go to the emergency room and tell them where you're at. Danger to self or others is a phrase that gets people's attention. I don't know. Don't go to 100%. Not yet. Not first.